Hi guys, Sandy from the Padel School here. In this video today, we're going to review and compare some of the top Starvie models. Now, I know they've got a huge range, so today we've chosen the Basalto, the Raptor Pro and the Metheora. Now, these rackets were sent by padelshop.com, which is actually a good place to go if you want to buy these rackets. And before I forget, please click subscribe if you want to see more racket reviews, but also if you want to see the tactical and technical tutorials that we post every week. So to begin with, we'll start with the Metheora racket, which is the Matty Diaz racket. And a few characteristics about this: it's a round shape, it's fully carbon, so it's quite kind of firm. It's got that rough surface, which if you like that kind of thing, you get an extra bit of friction on the ball. And when you feel it, it actually feels really nicely balanced. I was quite surprised at the weight. You don't feel like it's 382 grams, which this is. I've obviously got an overgrip on here, so it would be slightly less if it's from the factory. But actually kind of picking it up, you do feel like it's quite a kind of nicely balanced racket for one of the heavier rackets. So after having hit some balls and checked the balance is midway up the racket. Obviously, the more overgrips you put on, the more that kind of weight will move towards the handle of the racket. And I would say that it's kind of from a medium to firm stiffness on that racket. You don't feel it's really hard, like there's not a jarring impact when you're hitting the ball. Actually, the impact is quite nice on this racket, particularly from the back of the court. I found that you have good control on that ball, and actually you can kind of get a nice feel from the back of the court. Stepping up to the volley, I would say you get good power on this, but I probably don't get as much kind of control or touch as I would like in a racket. I usually myself would go for something a little bit softer, but for those that like quite firm rackets, and I would say relatively heavy rackets, this is not a bad choice. I quite kind of liked hitting with it. So moving on to the Raptor racket now, this is also a round shape. This is relatively light at 361 grams. Obviously it's a new racket, so I haven't got the overgrip on, which might change it by a few grams, but this is still a pretty light racket. It's also fully carbon. You also have that kind of rough surface, slightly different pattern, but it's the same feeling on that ball with the friction. As a balance, it doesn't feel too bad actually. It does feel a bit lighter, particularly after having played with the Metheora, but as a balance, when you're kind of swinging it before you step on court, it feels like quite a nice racket. The balance is also kind of middle of the racket, so it doesn't feel too head heavy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with this racket as well. So having hit some balls with this racket, you can definitely feel like it's a little bit softer, although it does have that firm outer shell, which is probably the carbon. So that means that the kind of impact will feel a little bit harder, even though it's a softer racket. Having hit with this racket, kind of from back of the court, front of the court, smashes, this really isn't the racket for me, to be honest with you. I don't get as much kind of power or control with this racket. From the back of the court, I was finding it wasn't as responsive as I would like. And then when I came to the front of the court, probably not the touch on the volley or the power on the overheads. So please let me know down in the comments if you use this racket and you love this racket, or if you actually agree with me. But for me, this is not the type of racket for me. So the third racket is the Basalto. This is a teardrop shape, so the other two are round shapes. This is teardrop, which means that the kind of sweet spot will be slightly further up. That balance actually is fairly even, considering it is teardrop. I've obviously got one grip on the handle, which means that it might be kind of slightly further down. And it's also got that rough surface on the outside, which is actually the same as the Metheora. And generally speaking, I quite like the feel of this racket. It's 365 grams, so slightly heavier than the Raptor, but obviously a lot lighter than the Metheora. And generally, it feels like quite a nice racket. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hitting some balls with this one as well. So having hit some balls with this racket, I would say that it's medium to firm, a bit like the Metheora. It's kind of a similar impact. From the back of the court, it feels nice. It's not jarring at all, and also it's not too soft. You get some good power. It's quite easy to hit down to the feet, but also to hit a little bit faster if you need to. And then when you come to net, with the volleys, I felt it was really responsive. You could hit nice kind of touch control volleys, as well as be aggressive and generate some good power. Same with the smashes, you can hit some aggressive, powerful shots with this. Now, before this this review, I wasn't expecting this to be my favorite of the 3 rackets, particularly that these are the kind of premium models used by Stupa and Matty Diaz. But actually, for me personally, I feel like this would be my choice out of the 3 of them. So I know a lot of you either use Starvie or have tested Starvie rackets, so let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or disagree with me. I won't be the slightest bit offended if you disagree, because obviously it's a personal preference. But if you want to buy these rackets, paddleshop.com is doing a promotion where I'll put the code down below, but it's 10% the paddle school, and that will get you 10% off your purchases. Now, if you want to see more racket reviews, I'm going to put a playlist of all my racket reviews on this side of the screen, and there we go through different brands.